A few years ago, I was having a debate with an old boomer about crypto. I explained to him how Bitcoin works, and in typical boomer fashion, he called it a Ponzi scheme. So I asked him if he collects Social Security, which of course he did, and so I calmly explained to him that his own Social Security checks are also a Ponzi scheme. Once again, he responded in typical boomer fashion. His face turned red, he got super triggered, he reacted like I just spit at him or something, and he started angrily spewing vile personal attacks at me. It was in this moment I knew I won the debate. He wanted to make it seem like he got so angry because I was so wrong. But the reality was, he got that angry because, deep down, he knew I was right. Let's take a moment to define what a Ponzi scheme is. A Ponzi scheme is an investment fraud that pays existing investors with funds collected from new investors. Ponzi scheme organizers often promise to invest your money and generate high returns with little or no risk. This is exactly, word for word, what Social Security is. It's a common misconception that when you pay Social Security tax, it goes into some fund for your own future. But this isn't the case at all. If it was that simple, why not just let you keep the funds and save it yourself? The reality is, it goes directly to someone who's currently collecting Social Security. In other words, paying existing investors with funds collected from new investors. It's literally the exact definition of a Ponzi scheme. You can't make this shit up. Once you peel back the curtain and unplug from the matrix, you'll soon start to see that just about all of society is run on Ponzi and pyramid schemes. Social Security was an easy, low-hanging fruit to use as an example, but you'll soon see this applies to just about every business sector of society. According to Wikipedia, a pyramid scheme is defined as a business model, which, rather than earning money or providing returns on investments, by sale of legitimate products to an end consumer, mainly earns money by recruiting new members with the promise of payments or services. As the number of members multiplies, recruiting quickly becomes increasingly difficult until it is impossible, and therefore most of the newer recruits do not make a profit. As such, pyramid schemes are unsustainable. The unsustainable nature of pyramid schemes has led to most countries outlawing them as a form of fraud.
Are you serious?
Really, most countries outlawed them? Or is it just better disguised now? Let's go back to that sentence. As the number of members multiplies, recruiting quickly becomes increasingly difficult until it is impossible, and therefore most of the newer recruits don't make a profit. Why does this sound so strangely familiar? Oh yeah, probably because that's literally what a typical modern-day corporation is. Think about it. A company like Amazon, for example. You got one guy at the top, he recruits more and more and more members, and as you move down the pyramid, you've now gotten to a point where newer recruits don't make a profit. This is exactly, word for word, the definition of a pyramid scheme. It's so funny that the older generations think they're so wise and are so arrogant to a point where they call everything they don't like a scam. Yet they've spent their entire lives living off and depending on the biggest scam ever. And now, they're constantly shaming young people for being lazy, for not participating in said biggest scam ever. Here's the problem with Ponzi schemes, however. Because they are fundamentally flawed, they all fail at some point. Sure, you can create a bigger one, a more well-disguised one, a more creative one, which is what society has done. And when you do that, you can delay the collapse for quite a long time. Sometimes, you can even delay it long enough that you won't see the consequences of the collapse yourself, which is essentially what the boomers are doing. But none of that changes the fundamental fact that the collapse will happen sooner or later. It's a matter of when and not if. This is why Gen Z is giving up, because they've realized this whole thing is a massive Ponzi scheme that will collapse at some point. Every government in developed nations around the world are complaining that Gen Z and millennials aren't having enough kids right now. If you read between the lines, what they're really saying is, every pyramid scheme needs new recruits, and right now there's not enough new recruits being born to keep their pyramid scheme going. When they complain about you being lazy and not wanting to work, what they're really saying is they need new recruits for their collapsing pyramid scheme, and they're trying to shame you as being lazy for not participating in it. But you guys are smart enough to be really the first generation to see it's all a big scam and refuse to participate in it. This Reddit comment right here puts it perfectly. I realized they were making their own mess and expecting me to clean it up. Only way for a child to learn is to deal with the consequences of their own actions. So no, I won't clean it up for them. I'll do my own thing. This is the perfect description of what modern society has become. It's run by a bunch of petulant 70-year-old children who repeatedly screwed up society with their own reckless decisions, and now they're constantly trying to shame us as being lazy for not wanting to clean up their mess. But just as with a child, if you keep cleaning up their mess for them, they'll never learn to take accountability for the consequences of their own actions. So, Gen Z is absolutely right for not wanting to work, for giving up, for dropping out of society. This is the only way society will learn to take responsibility for its own mistakes. In fact, a lot of this channel is based around why young men are checking out of society. But I'm beginning to think maybe we need a rebrand. Maybe instead of phrasing it as young men are checking out of society, we should instead call it young men are refusing to participate in the biggest Ponzi scheme ever.